There's no real beating around the topic when it comes to today's video. It's Pascal Siakam. He just got traded. That's naturally what everybody's going to be talking about, myself included. So, I'm JG Buckets. That's going to be today's video. Usual drill before the videos. Make sure you're leaving a like. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Plus, if you plan on doing any responsible sports betting in the near future, just make sure to check out my link in the description below. So, I wanted to do this video a lot earlier, but I was stuck at school, and by the time I got home, I'm on camera now. Like, it's about 4:45 when I'm filming this, so just keep that in mind. I'll have the trade details obviously up here, but before I fully get into the actual package itself, let's talk about something else for a second. It does have to do with the trade, it does have to do with Pascal, and it does have to do with the front office, but it's not specifically the details of the trade. As far as the situation goes, can we just sit here for a second and admit that this was incredibly poorly managed by the front office? Because if your plan was never giving him that extension, which it seems like it, there's been a couple of rumors that suggest as much, why would you hold on to him as long as you did? Like, you killed his value. I mean, you still got the package that you got back, and I'll talk about it in a second, but you deliberately shot yourself in the foot. If you weren't gonna extend him, and your plan was always to move him, the longer you held on to him, the more his value got back. Because I think most people that have watched Pascal Siakam play, which is Raptors fans and whatever other dedicated fan bases, I don't even want to talk about some of the other fan bases out there that are commenting on Pascal's game. Like, I've seen some atrocious takes in that regard. But if you watch Pascal Siakam, are you really gonna sit there and tell me that he's worth just what you got back for him right now from the Pacers? Because I think he's worth more than that. I comfortably think he's worth more than that. He's a much better player than 3 first-round pick and no real young assets, with all due respect to Noir and Kira Lewis. I think he's worth much more than that. But because of the situation and the bind that you put yourself in, if you're the front office, this is probably as decent of a return as you could have gotten back, considering that he was giving, again, reportedly, according to the rumor mill, no team's assurances that he would, work on an extension with them or re-sign until free agency. So obviously he could potentially be a rental and a flight risk. Given that circumstance, the return, I think, is all right. It's not great, it's not bad, given the circumstance. But that's the problem. The problem is the circumstance that you put yourself in if you're the front office of the Toronto Raptors. That's my big gripe with this whole situation. Now, if we're talking about the actual return itself, I find it a little bit tough to evaluate, all things considered, because I don't think Bruce Brown is here long-term, quite frankly. And I think that's the big part of it, right? Is I look at this deal and I just touched upon it. There's not an exciting young piece in there, right? Like, I think the 3 first-round picks are cool, although obviously they're probably going to be mid to late first-rounders, which the Raptors draft history, they've found very quality players at those points in the draft, so I don't hate that. Like, I really don't hate that. I think the return of the 3 first-round picks is cool. Like, it's cool. It's not great. You could have done better in a different situation, but we're not living in a different situation, unfortunately. It's okay. But the fact that there's no real young centerpiece in this deal, it's kind of my issue with that, unless somebody in the comment section wants to convince me about how Jordan Nwora is going to be the next Kevin Durant or something. I don't know. Like, I'm obviously teasing, but hey, if somebody has that take out there, drop it in the comment section, please. Or how Kira Lewis Jr. is going to be the next whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to intentionally disrespect these guys. They're obviously infinitely better basketball players than I could ever dream of being. But, they're not the guys that you hold up on a pedestal being like, look at these young assets that we got back. And that's where I really do think Bruce Brown comes into it, right? Like, I don't think Bruce Brown is going to be here forever, right? Like, I think Bruce Brown at one point or another is going to be flipped by the Raptors. And I think this trade is so hard to evaluate until you see what you can flip Bruce Brown into, because he could realistically, from a contender, fetch you a decent asset, or at least a buying team that thinks that they want to improve their squad or add like a little bit of extra punch off the bench, whatever the case is. Brown is going to be a piece that is appealing to somebody, and when they are, you're going to get somebody. Hopefully, you're going to get a young asset back, and at that point, that's when I think the full evaluation of what this trade has been can be completed. Because, yeah, like, Bruce Brown, we've seen him on the Denver Nuggets play an impactful role for that team. And at this point, you're sitting there and you're maybe looking around the league. You're looking at a team like the Miami Heat that could maybe use like a Bruce Brown, or a team like, I don't know, off the top of my head, like the Lakers, the Mavericks, that like Bruce Brown would genuinely help their team. And I think at that point, depending on whatever young player you hopefully yield from that deal, that's when you can really sit there and look at this trade and give it a proper evaluation. As of now, again, as I've said, it looks okay. Again, my big gripe with this trade is just the circumstances that the front office put themselves into, not necessarily the trade itself. I think considering where you were, the return could be worse, but you shouldn't have gotten to the place that you were. That's my 2 cents on the matter, really. I'm sure there's some other stuff that's gonna pop into my head later where I'm gonna sit there and be like, damn, I wish I talked about that while I was on camera, but it is what it is. That's kind of just the nature of doing these kinds of videos where you're doing the fairly quick reaction to a recent event like a trade. But yeah, drop in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on the trade? Obviously, you've heard mine. I'm curious. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more optimistic takes than mine. Mine's somewhere in the middle. Like, it's not a negative take, but it's not a particularly super positive one either. Again, it's somewhere in the middle. You let me know how you're feeling about this trade and whether or not the Raptors handled this well, which I really don't think they did. I mean, it's whatever. It could have been worse. I think that's my takeaway. It could have been worse considering where you were. Yeah, end of the video. Like the video if you're still here. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Other than that, folks, it's been JJ Buckets, and I will see everybody next time.